Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have another set of fresh revenge stories for you. And our first story: copy my parts and you go out of business. My old boss told me this story, and I thought it'd fit in here. We both work in the automotive aftermarket world, manufacturing and selling parts to fix up or restore classic cars. At the time, my boss worked for a company that made those big tubular push bumpers and side steps for trucks and Jeeps and such. It's not uncommon in our industry for companies to splash each other's parts. Splashing is when somebody copies an exact copy of your part. We try to avoid it happening, but that doesn't always work. One day, somebody calls him and starts with a lot of questions about the bumpers, things like which other models do they fit, what's the return policy, etc. He quickly figured out that this was a competitor that's going to splash his parts, then return them for a refund. So instead of not selling him the parts, he sells him the whole pallet full of parts. The revenge part here is that they build these parts specifically for this company. They moved brackets and bent things wrong so that visually everything looked correct, but it would never in a million years bolt up to the truck and work. Sure enough, 60 days later the parts come back, they issue the refund, then trash that lot of parts. Fast forward a few months, that competitor goes out of business. Pretty hard to sell junk parts that don't fit. And our second story. After months of putting up with my roommate from hell, I got the revenge of a lifetime. This story takes place a couple years back. During college, I lived with several roommates. All of them were nice and we got along well, except for this one bee. Let's call her Karen. If Satan and Hitler had a child, and that child had a child with Stalin and Cruella de Vil, that'd be Karen for you. She's a loudmouth, stupid, egocentric bee who has a face that scares the crap out of toilets. She would never clean up after herself, would always leave her plates and things at the spot where she last used them. I lost count of how many times I caught her stealing my clothes without asking, and if you so much as touch her clothes, she loses her crap on you. Or her drinking our lactose-intolerant roommate's almond milk, and anytime we confronted her for drinking it, she'd shrug and say, "I only had a sip, stop being so stingy." She plays her music loud at night, invites strangers without giving any heads up. A time or two she didn't pay rent even though her parents are filthy rich and she's wearing Gucci and Prada stuff. Karen also effing lies about everything, even things that are not worth lying about. Like if she woke up at 7, you ask her, she'd lie through her teeth and say she woke up with the sunrise because she's a natural. P.S. This is something I actually heard her say to her parents while she was Skyping them. So cringy. Who the F says that? But I digress. For months we have effing put up with her. Of course, we tried to get other roommates, but unfortunately, when we all moved in everything, all the documents and contracts were done in her name, so kicking her out would require a lot of effort. And most of us were busy with school and work and life happens, so we ignore it as much as we can and try to move on. We're now all seniors in our final semesters, meaning graduation was coming, and Karen is planning a backpack trip across Europe with her friends as a graduation gift to herself. This is important, so remember this. One of our roommates and my closest friend, Sasha, has a crush on a guy that lives down the hall. Anytime the two of them are together, Sasha and the guy keep giving each other googly eyes and blushing faces. It was so cute. Sasha is a verbal autistic person and has never dated anyone because she has a hard time socializing and understanding social cues and subtlety. Which, let's face it, that's the core of dating, especially flirting. But with a lot of encouragement from me and the final roommate, Lola, we got her to ask him out, and he said yes. She was so happy, you guys, she flew back into the apartment, did an hour of happy dance with her arms flailing about and a crap-eating grin on her face. Needless to say, we were all so happy. Karen caught wind of this, and it just so happens at the time she was having relationship problems. I guess her boyfriend finally realized that he was dating human garbage. Not one to be outshined, Karen, behind all of our backs, went to the guy's place and spun lies about Sasha, saying she's a serial cheater, and even made a fake account for Sasha's so-called boyfriend. The guy never called Sasha, and eventually weeks passed by, and he tells us why. But by then, Sasha felt like the damage was done and lost interest in him. I was effing furious. This level of dickery and bloody pettiness is the last straw that broke the camel's back, and I vowed I wouldn't effing leave until I served my slice of justice. Here's another character that you must know about, Professor C. His wife 2 years ago was in a horrible car accident and as a result is in a wheelchair. This is especially problematic because she was a stay-at-home mom that took care of their 2 special needs kids, and they have a toddler at home. Home life is a mess for him. He's running ragged between working and single-handedly taking care of his family. The university took pity and also feared the workload would see one of their best and most beloved teachers leave the school, and they struck a deal with him to help him out. In all of his classes, there will be quizzes and midterms. This doesn't change, but assignments you submit and he corrects at the end of the year. This is important because our university has zero tolerance on professors that don't constantly update the students' coursework so that students have the chance to improve their grades. Karen, the lazy and stupid bee she is somehow skating through his assignments, even though they require a crap ton of research and writing. I accidentally learned that one of her older friends told her that she only needs to submit the paper on its due date and to only write the first 3 pages and use a paraphrase tool for the rest of the paper, so the plagiarism software won't detect it. And would think it's original material when the end of the year comes, submit a hard copy, but with the first pages being her actual work and the rest being completely plagiarized. Professional work. Prof C won't know because the likelihood a man as busy as him thoroughly checking the work of 120-plus students is pretty low. I grinned. A plan was beginning to formulate in my head. Oh, sweet mother of Jesus, she's going down. All semester long, I let her do this for all of these 7 papers. One of them is a term paper that has 20% on it alone, while I spied and gathered all of her passcodes, social media, her student ID, everything. The end of the year comes and I compiled all of her assignments, both the original one with the paraphrasing tools she used to circumvent plagiarism and the one she finally handed them in. I even made photos. They were there side by side for comparison of the assignments. This is a good start, but not enough. So one day, chilling in the living room, I open a conversation about relationships. Karen is 2-timing her new boyfriend and sleeping with some other person, so I ask her questions like, "Don't you feel guilty for cheating?" And "You do realize this is wrong?" I even paraphrase my words in a way that is vague but also clear. For example, I would say, "It's not fair. So many people work so hard every day to be successful, and here you are cheating and lying your way to success." Karen, narcissistic as F, would respond with snippets of, "I don't care," and how she isn't cheating, she's just having fun, and that everyone does it, so why not her too? This is too good to be true. Even her answers are vague. It's like God put his hand on my shoulder, looked me right in the eyes and said, "Bury this bee." And I'll be damned if I didn't. As you probably guessed by now, I was recording everything. The recording plus the photos and her assignments were more than enough evidence. I sent an anonymous email to the professor. I told the girls so that they could prep for the crap storm that was coming. 3 weeks later, results are out. She failed and lost her crap. She was screaming, crying, wailing. It was a sight to see. You best believe the girls and I were laughing, and she tried to talk to the professor, but he wasn't having it. She cried and begged for a second chance, but he said a hard no. So now she has 2 options. She goes ahead and doesn't graduate with us and takes on a whole other semester for one measly course, or takes a summer course and cancels her trip to Europe, which, mind you, she spent a freaking ton on. Something like $13,000. And I know it could have been much cheaper, but Princess Karen only wanted the best. So yeah. Next couple weeks, she spent sleepless nights because she was calling and canceling all the reservations she made, trying to get her money back, but again, God really was out for blood that day. Because the cancellation was so close to her trip, most places refused to refund, or some charged her cancellation fees. She only managed to scrape back $5,500. She lost $7,500. It's not over. Having damning evidence I earned with gusto, I told her she was going to pay all of the bills till we move out, which was in 2 months. Payback for all the time she was late on payments or defaulted, and she would from now on do her part of the house chores, or else I was going to send it all to the administration and faculty dean, and she would for sure be kicked out, and all those university years would have been for nothing. She hated it, she threw tantrums, she cussed me out, but by God, if she didn't do what she was told. She cleaned her stuff, apologized to Sasha for what she did. I forced her to come clean to her boyfriend. I don't know the guy, but the few times I met him, he seemed super sweet. I felt bad for the guy. I watched her actually do the dishes for the first time in years. It was effing amazing, and I don't regret it one bit. In fact, anytime I feel sad now as an adult, I kick back my feet and reminisce, and a slow, crap-eating grin draws itself upon my face. And our last story. My ex-husband and a crappy marriage counselor tried to screw me over. This happened over 10 years ago. My first husband and I had been married for 24 years when he out of the blue said he wanted a divorce. As you can imagine, I was floored, scared, devastated. I think his lawyer told him things would go better if he agreed to counseling. He chose a counselor that had been recommended by a friend. I work in the healthcare industry, so I'm pretty conscious about professionalism. This counselor kept us waiting 20 minutes for our appointment. Once introductions were made, she immediately asked for her check or cash before our session. By now, my spidey senses were off the charts. Finally, our session begins, but not until she pulls out her lunch and starts eating, saying she has been too busy to eat. So we get down to the session, which is entirely focused on my childhood and my bipolar mother. The scenario repeats weekly for 6 weeks. We never discuss marriage issues or anything to do with my husband. In fact, she is totally zeroed in on me. Finally, I ask when we can talk about our marriage. She looks at my husband and says, "Fred, what do you want from all this?" He says, "A divorce." I proceed to stand up and walk out, leaving them sitting there. I immediately go home and look her up on the state licensing website. The site shows that her license has lapsed. I immediately call the psychiatrist overseeing her work and let him know that he is employing and billing for an unlicensed marriage counselor. He immediately apologizes and refunds the entire $900 spent with her to me. I then call the licensing board and tell them that she was practicing without a license. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.